All right, welcome to the Cultivate NYC Podcast. I am Luke Calvert, and I'm joined by
Charles Wolford.
Yes, and this is a podcast about our church plant in Harlem, New York City. And today we're literally going to give you an introductory about who we are, what we are, why we are, what this podcast is going to accomplish, and it's really going to tell you why we're here, why Charles and I are joining together to plant this church, to start this podcast. And if this is your first introductory to us, or we hang out with you weekly, we want you to be informed on what our church is doing, and this is one medium that we're using to do that. So, Charles, the first thing I want you to do is explain to me who you are. Tell me about your wife, tell me about who you are, and tell me about how you came to New York City.
All right. Well, first of all, man, on a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you to start this podcast, man? I know that you are going insane on the inside.
I'm a 100 out of 10.
Right.
And Charles is like a 1.1 out of 10.
No, man, I'm grateful, man. So my name is Charles. Like I said before, I'm from Kansas. I'm a church kid from Kansas, man, who just made his way out of the city, moved to Atlanta, found the Lord there authentically. Started a Bible study with some friends on campus, and I didn't think I would be preaching. I just wanted to see people come to meet the Lord and have a good time. And I was always passionate about creating a space that wasn't super churchy, but Christian could come together and fellowship and have an alternative to, kicking it in the world and doing things they weren't supposed to be doing. So that kind of followed me in ministry. After I graduated college, man, I moved back to Dallas, started serving officially at a couple of churches, and a few young adult ministries later, man, I really sensed the call to pastor. And now, long story short, here we are in Harlem, man. So it's an honor to serve alongside with you here in Harlem. Also, my wife, she's a Georgia peach. She's from Decatur, where it's greater. Her name is Jordan.
Is that a saying, or did you just make that up?
No, that's a saying.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure we'll talk more about our families, our wives, and everything that we're doing, being here on mission, man. So I don't really like talking too much about myself, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve, and it's been great so far, man.
In terms of Cultivate NYC, who are you?
I am the lead pastor, the lead planter. That feels weird to say, but yes, lead pastor, lead planter at Cultivate NYC.
Yeah. And it's an honor to work alongside you. Charles and I didn't know each other's names probably about 7 months ago.
Right.
And the Lord has done a ton in those last 7 months. And we're here to share kind of what the Lord is doing. I'm going to introduce myself. But before I do, there's always a phrase you use when you're kind of casting vision on how you became a Christian.
Yeah.
Like kind of, and I would love to get into this deep, into another podcast about really your story about becoming a believer.
Yeah.
But what's the phrase you used when you were in college? You went from a what promoter to a what promoter?
Oh man, yeah, I went from a party promoter to a Christ promoter. Yeah. So that really is my story. When I got to college at 17, I didn't want to do anything related to the church, man. I'm a PK. So if you don't know what a PK is, you're a preacher / pastor's kid. I grew up and spent my whole life in the church, and I thought I was gonna go to college and kick it, just like get away. And I did that, man, so much so that I became a party promoter. I mean, half of that was because I couldn't afford to get into the club. But yeah, man, and the Lord, he allowed me to do my thing for a couple years, but I didn't know that he was using that so I could build up a network of people, and then he can draw me onto himself. And then say, all right, all those people that you invited to the club, invite them to Bible study. So it's an insane story how he uses even the years that we are away from him to draw people into his kingdom.
One day we'll get deep in that story.
Yeah.
And Charles and Jordan, they moved here in January, which I heard was the best time to move to New York City when it was getting really cold.
It was. Yeah.
So you used to have the Mongo boots out.
Oh man, yes.
You're about to have to pull those back out.
Man, yeah, it's starting to cool off now. So like, if you haven't been in New York in the fall or in the winter, man, we're in those days where you wake up and it's cold and it might be hot in the afternoon. It might not. You have no idea. You really have to just layer up and prepare for anything, man.
What the Instagram post say was like, 6 a.m. it's winter. 10 a.m. it's fall.
Yes.
2 p.m. it's summer.
Yeah.
And like by 8 p.m. again, you're in like spring/winter again.
Yeah, man.
And then it said dress accordingly.
Dress accordingly. Good luck.
So my name is Luke Calvert. My wife Shelby and my son Baker. We moved to the city in June, and so we've only been here for about 4.5, 5 months. We're really just getting our feet wet and what it looks like to be a New Yorker.
Right.
I personally have absolutely fallen in love with the city. I love being around people. In this podcast, over the next thousands of episodes, I'm sure you'll get to hear about that and why I love talking, like on a podcast. But I'm the spiritual development pastor at Cultivate NYC, which basically means we go from milk to meat. We go from not knowing anything about the Word, but really then diving into the Word and becoming more Christ-like and knowing His Word. So that's really my role here. But truthfully, planting is kind of something where you just throw anything at the wall and see what the Lord, really sticks and what stays. And so I'm from Indiana, 20 minutes south of Indianapolis, a place called Greenwood, Indiana, where I pastored for 4.5 years there in Greenwood, actually my home church. So basically in my lifetime, and this is why it's so crazy that Charles and I even are here in this room recording this podcast, is I really would say that I didn't want to go to the cities and I didn't want to go back home. Yeah. Well, I went back home and pastored for 4.5 months, and now my wife and I I'm pastoring, and my wife and I moved to New York City, a place I had never been, a place I never wanted to go. But the Lord really, through the pandemic, called my wife and I to Cultivate NYC, which we'll get into, but once was Cross Creek.
Yeah.
But we'll learn a ton about that over the next couple of podcasts. But I just want you to know who Charles and I are. Why we're even talking. Why you're spending your X amount of minutes listening to us and you're on the train or whatever you're doing right now. So Charles, that's who we are. That's what we're doing. Now there's two extremely vital things that you and I love to do.
Yeah.
Okay. One is you love to give riddles. If you ever saw this thing on Instagram, if you follow Charles or I, he absolutely embarrassed me on Instagram.
Oh my God.
I will never forgive him for doing that to me. And I love dad jokes. I was a dad joke lover before I even became a dad. Yeah. But when I had a son, it took it to a whole different level.
Yeah.
I always say that the dad joke life, I didn't choose that. It chose me. It chose me.
You fully embraced the dad life.
I'm open for embarrassment once again. So Charles, hit me with the best riddle you have.
Okay. I'm gonna do it again. Are you ready? Riddle of the day.
Okay.
Here we go. Pay attention. You see a boat filled with people. It has not sunk, but when you look again, you don't see a single person on the boat. Why?
It's the Titanic.
No.
So I'm seeing a boat that's filled with people.
Yes.
And then I look away and I look back.
Yeah.
And now all the people are gone. I see a boat.
You see a boat filled with people. It has not sunk, but when you look again, you don't see a single person on the boat. Why?
All right, give me a hint. Give me some sort of hint.
I can't give you a hint, man. It's a riddle.
I see a boat and it has people on it, and then I look back, I blink, and they're all gone. And this...
You look back and you don't see a single person.
If you are watching this, comment in some way, shape, or form with what
you are going to be so mad when I tell you the answer to this.
See a boat.
Yeah.
And nobody's on it now.
Yeah. It was filled with people too.
All right, give it to me.
Okay. You don't see a single person because it's a marriage cruise. I know you guys can kind of see him on video, but in person, it is hilarious. This is the same face he had from the last riddle.
I actually have a little bit of a natural disdain for boat jokes. You know why?
Why?
One day, my friend and I went on a cruise, and it was a cruise filled with swingers.
What?
It was called the Pineapple Express, and it's a Facebook group that took over this cruise. And no wonder there were so many deals on it, but my friend and I went because both of our wives couldn't go. So I'm just going to let you kind of picture that in your brain. Now it's my friend and I on a swingers cruise. If you wore any pineapple gear, pineapple shorts, swim trunks, hat, you were then notified as a swinger.
Wow.
And they said that there was 2,700 people on the boat, 2,200 of them swingers.
That's insane.
Yeah. So what do you think?
And that was the day you decided to wear your pineapple shirt,
exactly. All right. So you got me with the riddle.
Okay.
Here's the dad joke.
All right.
I think you might be able to get this. Why do fathers take an extra pair of socks when they go golfing?
Because their first pair might have a hole in one.
Oh, have you heard that?
I haven't.
Oh, that's good. Yes.
Yeah, you can't get me, man.
In case they get a hole in one.
Yeah.
I play a lot of golf. Charles
That
does not.
is
But
funny.
I've never got a hole in one in my life. So, all right, the next portion of this podcast, and really we wanted this introductory podcast to be super short. We want to give you an insight of who we are, kind of our personality, what we love to do, why we're coming to plant this church. And now I want to talk about what planting a church is. Why would you do something like that? There's a lot of churches around all over the world. Why Harlem? Why here? And what is Cultivate NYC?
Yeah. So I have a crazy story behind the name Cultivate, and if I shared it all today, it would take up all of our time. But just know that Cultivate has a special place in my heart. But I'll just kind of give the meaning behind it and everything, and I'm pretty sure we'll get into the history of it and our connection to it. But our general mission here, while in Harlem, is we just want to cultivate a community that looks like heaven. Yeah. We really understood that with the type of leadership we have, with the discipleship DNA that our church will have, that there's no way to get around cultivating a community that's diverse and looks like heaven. And literally, the word cultivate is defined as preparing, working on, promoting, and improving. And I believe that is a vital function of the church. Yeah. Believers come to church to be improved, to be equipped for kingdom work. Yeah. So I, as a believer, should come to church and I should be in a process of ongoing cultivation. Yeah. So literally, it's who we are and it's what we do. Yeah. We are Cultivate, and we cultivate Christians and believers. I just believe that the Lord doesn't save anyone that he doesn't want to use in his kingdom. And I think it's time out, especially after kind of how the church was kind of put on pause in the pandemic. I think it's time out to come back and do church as usual, you know? Just go to Sunday service and be of no use to the church, but just kind of fill up a space or be a butt in a seat. I don't think that that's what the church is for. And I think if we really want to be effective in our communities, everybody should see that they have something to do in his kingdom.
That's right. And I think one thing that's going to be specific about our church plant is that we are going to make disciples. Yeah. We want to be a disciple-making church, which means that when you walk into the church, you're walking into a body of believers who are on mission. And if you're not a believer, we want you to see a people who say the things that they're doing. Yeah. And not just be, you got to walk the walk and talk the talk. Too often times we get our popcorn out in the middle of a Sunday morning service and we're just consuming. Right. We really want to be a church that reads about Christ and then follows what he does. If we know that Jesus is our Lord and Savior, that if we know that he is King, man, why wouldn't I want to follow after him? We just had our first Cultivate NYC Bible study. Yeah. And we read this psalm where it really kind of gives this vast picture of God. And we asked everybody who came to the Bible study, like, what's one attribute of God that really stands out in this psalm? And everybody started reading. We read the psalm and everybody went around in a circle. And there's so many attributes of God. He's merciful. He's just. He's loving. Yeah. He's steadfast. And then we looked at the group of people and they said, don't you want other people to experience him? That's really the ethos of this church plant. Oh, yeah. That's the ethos of us, Charles and I, joining together on mission. And we're not trying to build the largest church. We want to be a church that plants churches and makes disciples. So we want to send others out to go do the very same thing in other parts of New York City and other parts of the world.
Right.
And so what Cultivate NYC is truly going to be an authentic community where we are about the word and we're about Christ.
Yeah. And one thing about what you just said was when we were teaching the Bible study, all we were really talking about are the attributes of God.
Yeah.
So we just sat around and read a scripture that started off by saying the Lord is, and then it just listed off descriptors and attributes of God. And when you think about what the gospel is, and when we tell people to share the good news and evangelize, a lot of people get intimidated because when you think in your mind of evangelism, you think of like one or two things, right? Mm-hmm. You think of the crazy guy on the corner with the megaphone, who everybody's like, okay, this guy's insane. Mm-hmm. Or you think about going some random place as a group and handing out sandwiches to people and praying for people. Or just kind of like random street evangelism where you're just talking to strangers. Right. You don't think about having conversations in your everyday life with people in your network, people who the Lord has already placed you with, and you don't have to read a script. Hey, do you know the Lord is da 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 da? Like, no, like if you truly are a Christian and you are madly in love with the Lord, you should be able to pinpoint at least one attribute that you're in love with and be able to talk to somebody about that. Like, just like when you start dating somebody new and it's like, ooh, man, let me tell you about this girl I'm dating, man. She is fine. She's funny. She's da da da. It should be that smooth. When you're talking to somebody, you should be able to tell them one thing about God.
That's right.
One thing about his character, one thing about what he's done for you. That is what the good news is. The good news is the story of who God is and what God has done for us so that we can have relationship with him for eternity. Right. It really is simple as that. And I just believe that we really make it too complex. Yeah. And it's kind of intimidating when you think of, man, like there's so many people who are lost who don't know the gospel. But start with your small network of people. Do your friends know him? Do your sister, your cousins, your parents, your family, let alone people that you have no idea who they are? Start there, and then you'll be more comfortable going outside of your network of people to share the good news. So I pray that our Bible studies really are kind of like equipping stations for them to come in and leave with something, at least one more tool to be able to share the good news with people.
Speaking of Bible studies and what we've got going on at Cultivate NYC, if you're listening to this, Charles, tell them how they could get involved. What are our pages that they can go follow us on social media, and what's a couple events that we have coming up in the future?
Man, we have some really cool stuff coming up, man. So first of all, if you want to follow us, you can follow our church at Cultivate_NYC on Instagram. You can follow me at CWolfNYC. I would love to follow you back, and we post sermon clips and different things like that. But just a little background of me moving here during the summer. I moved to Harlem actually in February, but in the summers when we started to actually gather and meet, when Luke moved here in June, and it was just right when certain limitations of COVID started to lift, and really the only place we could meet was a coffee shop.
Yep.
It's a coffee shop called Cafe Amrita. Shout out to them.
Yep.
They let us occupy their space, and we were just a couple guys saying, hey, we want to gather people because we're starting a church. And hey, as long as we spent money, they let us sit down and gather. Right. It's all, hey, it usually comes down to that, right? Yeah. So, and we just kind of kept that same dynamics, and we've been inviting people, hey, can I buy you a coffee? Can I buy you dinner? And from there, we kind of led it into having spiritual conversations and faith conversations. And if you're in Harlem, you're in the Manhattan area, we meet every Thursday from 5 to 8 at Cafe Amrita. We just started having Bible studies. So now we're moving towards having, of course, Bible studies and worship nights. And we're going to do a Friendsgiving brunch. I mean, that's another, that's,
once again, free
come
food.
on now.
Free food.
Free food is literally how you lead people to the Lord.
That's right.
Honestly.
That's right. Is that in the discipleship course then?
It should be.
It
should be in the curriculum.
We'll add it.
Sponsored by Chick-fil-A, maybe.
That's right.
That's the Lord's food.
That's
so,
right.
And then, for us, we're anxiously but patiently moving our way towards having a Sunday service next year. So we're praying that these coffee shop nights and these Bible studies will help us build momentum as we move into the next year.
Yeah. Well, welcome. If this is your first time introducing ourselves, Charles Wolford, his wife Jordan, Luke, my wife Shelby, and Baker. We would love to meet you. If we know you already, it's been a blessing coming to New York City, getting to meet you guys. And really, we believe that the Lord is in the details of this church plant. So this is the Cultivate NYC Podcast. Thank you for tuning in.
Peace. 20 minutes on the dot.
Perfect. That was it. Every episode needs to be like that. All right.